My name is Lauren Valliere. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of GrowWise. So we are a SRED tax credit consulting firm. And the problem that we're trying to solve is the time, effort, and energy required to file SRED. We built an AI-driven platform to simplify the process for our clients, and we're really focused on saving time for the founding team. And so today is going to be a bit of a SRED 101 and also about maximizing your SRED refund. So hopefully there's going to be something here for everyone, no matter where you're at in your SRED journey, whether you haven't even filed yet, you're still trying to understand the program, or whether you've been filing for years and you want to learn how to maximize your claim. Okay. So definitely what I mentioned, we're going to talk a bit about how it works, what's going on with SRED, what is it, best practices for maximizing your claim. I'm going to do a quick demo to show you how to quantify your SRED calculation and include that in your tax, include that in your cash forecasting, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So if you're online, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to pop them in the chat. We have Irma here, and she'll be able to kind of call it out if there's any questions. If it's topical to what I'm talking about, feel free to pop in the chat as I go. If it's something more specific to your situation or kind of better suited for a Q&A time at the end, feel free. I'm around Communitech all day today, so if anyone has any other questions, we can set up a time to chat, whether that be virtual or in person. Perfect. So I'm going to do just a quick gauge of the room around how familiar people are with SRED. So we'll do it in person first. Are you familiar with SRED? Have you done it before?
So I've done it from like the engineering department point of view, where we were claiming it in manufacturing context.
Okay.
So I was responsible for the entire department, and then just the report writing. So,
okay. Yeah. The worst part of it. Yeah. Perfect. And then I don't know if anyone online wants to pop anything in the chat. You can kind of just go high level if you're not familiar at all, if you are slightly familiar, if you've done it before, if you've worked with a consultant, feel free to pop any details about kind of where you're at, what you know in the chat. And then I'm going to try to kind of frame the conversation around where people are at. So the more information you can provide, the better this will be. I'll give you a second to do that. I think most of the people that registered had said they're earlier on in their SRED journey, so a little bit less familiar with the program, maybe haven't applied yet. I don't know if anyone's saying anything in the chat, but
yeah, Justin said that he's slightly familiar. They filed for a while ago.
Okay.
And then he said this is their first year.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I think in the registration, like there was a question about that, and I remember seeing a lot of people were new. So a lot of this today is going to be more so for educating on when you're new to SRED, but there will be some tips around how to maximize if you're currently doing SRED or want to get better at it. Okay, so SRED is Canada's largest tax credit program. Every year, the Canadian government disperses $4 billion into the economy through the SRED program. So it's by far the most lucrative SRED tax credit program in Canada. You can get a refund for up to 2/3 of the eligible expenses that you incur related to SRED, or related to innovation through SRED. It's non-dilutive, so it's great for startups and scale-ups that are growing and need cash without any equity. And the goal of SRED at a high level is to ease the financial burden on businesses that are doing innovative work. So that's kind of the goal of the SRED program, and that's a little bit about it. And we'll get a little more into the details, into the weeds. So around what work qualifies. The core of the SRED program is to fund projects that solve innovative and technically difficult problems. So this can be in a variety of contexts. This can be around creating or improving processes, products, technologies. It's applicable across the board. The core of the problem has to be a technical issue that requires iteration and problem solving to address. So it's the times when, it's bad to say, but when there's a struggle. We say SRED funds the struggle. If there's a clear-cut solution that you're working on, it's just a matter of putting in the time and doing it. That's not going to be eligible for SRED. SRED is focused on funding the projects where there's technical uncertainty, there's questions that aren't answered, and you have to really work through those processes and struggle, try new things, iterate, test, problem solve, muscle through that problem, and learn from there. So it must be an experimental and systematic process. So it's not just kind of willy-nilly, you try this, you try that. There must be a goal in mind of what you're trying to achieve. You know, all that systematic investigation, testing, prototyping, design, etc. And then you don't need to succeed at your goal, but you need to learn something. So you need to learn what doesn't work, what does work. If you get marginally closer to your goal, that's great. If you come nowhere close to your goal, that's also totally fine. But there does need to be a goal in mind, work done to address the goal, and lessons learned. So now that you know what is eligible for SRED, if you know that you have a project that's eligible for SRED, where you've had that sort of process improvement and you had to work through it, improve, design, iterate, what is eligible? What expenses are eligible for SRED? So there's 3 buckets within SRED. The first is salaries, and this is specifically for technical employees. So this is typically developers, engineers, project managers, that level of employee. If you're a small team and you're founders, but you're doing technical work and you're paying yourself a salary, that's the key point, that salary can be eligible to reimburse through SRED. And this is the most lucrative aspect of SRED. Up to 2/3 of your salary expenses can be refunded through the SRED program. So if you're paying your technical team members, say an engineer, $100,000, and all of the work they do is eligible for SRED, doing only technical problem solving and doing that design work, prototyping, iterating, testing, up to $65,000 of their salary can be refunded to you through the SRED program. The second bucket is contractor or consultant costs. So this is when you're paying a contractor to solve a problem. If you're paying a contractor to do their kind of quote unquote normal day-to-day activities, that's not going to be eligible for SRED. But if you're paying them, call it $40,000, and they have to go do work that qualifies for SRED, so that is iterative, that's difficult, they're solving technical problems, that's going to be eligible for SRED, that whole expense. And you can get around 40% of that contractor or consultant expense reimbursed through SRED. So slightly less lucrative, but still a great option. And then the third bucket is materials used or consumed in testing. So this is more applicable to manufacturing, pharmaceutical, that sort of type of company, where there's a physical good. So if you're actually in the design work and in the prototyping and manufacturing process, there's materials or equipment, materials transformed, consumed, used in that testing that are no longer viable, that you basically wasted during testing. The cost for those materials can be reimbursed. And that's also around 40%. It does depend on province and sort of the details of that equipment, if there's a resale value to them at all, but around 40% of material costs can be reimbursed. And I should make a note there. So as I mentioned, equipment, any capital costs are not eligible to be reimbursed through SRED. So if you need to purchase a piece of machinery, a building, those sorts of costs, those are not going to be eligible to be reimbursed through SRED. There might be changes coming to the SRED program. There's been, sort of teaser, there's been hints that they might be including capital expenses in the future. But as of right now, it's not eligible. So if there's an asset that you're purchasing and you need to purchase for your business, unfortunately, that does not count as materials. Perfect. So now that you understand the what, let's talk about the who. So SRED is an extremely patriotic program. Only Canadian expenses, companies, costs can be eligible to be reimbursed through the SRED program. So all the work must take place in Canada. The business must be Canadian business. If you're hiring a contractor, that contractor must be located in Canada. Your technical team members must be located in Canada. The materials must be used in the testing in Canada. So I think you get the point. Everything needs to happen in Canada. And the second comes back to what I was mentioning before. You have to be solving problems and technical problems. This is not eligible if you're solving business problems, scale up issues, marketing, business development. These have to be technical problems. Any industry can apply. The 3 largest are tech, manufacturing, and pharmaceuticals. But across the board, there's no discrimination or rigidity around which industry. So it's really more about the work that you're doing and not about the mission of your company. And then you have to be spending money. I wanted to highlight this one because a lot of people get confused between the difference between IRAP and SRED. IRAP is very similar to SRED, But the way that IRAP works is you apply for IRAP, you get the money, and then you go out and spend the money. SRED is the exact opposite. For SRED, you spend the money throughout the year on contractors, materials, or salaries. At the end of the year, you count up all of your expenses and figure out what's eligible for SRED. That's kind of where we come in. But then you apply for SRED, and then you get reimbursed for those expenses. So if you don't have any expenses going out the door yet, you don't pay yourself a salary, you're not paying contractors, etc., there's nothing yet to be reimbursed for. So that's sort of how it works. I have a lot of questions that come up, I'm doing SRED eligible work. How do I get SRED? It's like, well, there's nothing yet to be reimbursed for. So you have to be at the stage of your business when money's going out the door. Got to make money, got to spend money to make money. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick gauge of the room here as well. So if you could just pop what industry you're in, you could do high level or niche. I'd love to hear kind of what industry you're in so I can give maybe some more topical examples. I'd love to hear from you what industry you're in.
The industrial robotic space is the best way to describe it.
Okay, so you have physical product as well. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so maybe if you have a moment, just pop your industry in the chat, and I can kind of give some more examples or talk a little bit, more relevantly to what you're working on. Have we got anything in the chat or what?
Informatics, geolocation, healthcare sales.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, if there's anyone else popping in the chat, but a little bit across the board. Tech? Agri-tech? Okay, perfect. Okay, a little bit of everything. I'll try to give some examples kind of across the board. So there's just a few examples. So building for a tech company, building a custom software or internal tool in manufacturing or informatics, prototyping or testing a new hardware or new technology, designing that, improving this is kind of applicable across board, but improving the speed, accuracy, or scalability of your system, whether that be a software, whether that be an actual tangible item. The core of that is that there's a difficult technical problem, requires iterating and testing, and there's lessons learned. So it really does not matter the project you're working on. Like we've seen some examples of things you never would have thought would be eligible for SRED or don't sound like they're insanely innovative products, but it's not about whether the product is innovative. It's about whether the work you did to get to your product is innovative. So you could have the most boring product, like you build a table, but if you're doing so in a new way, you're manufacturing in a different way, or using a new material, maybe the shipping process is different, anything like that, where there's a difficult problem and you're solving that and it requires that design or that iterative testing, that work, that can be eligible for SRED. So a bit about how to track SRED. So if you're in the kind of early days and you've yet to figure out, if you're applying for SRED, you haven't applied yet, the core problem you need to address right now is how you're tracking your SRED. So before any project begins, before you go down any rabbit hole of investigation, a really good thing to have in the back of your mind is that question of, is this shreddable? If you have a solid understanding of what's eligible for SRED, you can then ask yourself before every project, is this eligible for SRED? And if it is, you can bring that mindset into that project and understand what needs to be tracked and how to keep better track of what you're doing. So if you've answered the question, yes, I think it's eligible for SRED, or you call me and say, Lauren, this is what I'm doing, is this eligible for SRED? And I say yes. The core around tracking your SRED is around tracking your employee and contractor time. As I mentioned, the salaries are the most lucrative aspect of SRED. If you're able to track your time better, you're able to get more SRED. That's point blank the truth. So track what your employees are doing their time. I know that's a very annoying endeavor if you're not currently doing it. And we see it all the time. If you're not currently tracking by hour, like some labs do or some developers do, if you're not currently doing that, a great solution is weekly, bi-weekly. I wouldn't recommend pushing it up to a monthly schedule, but if that's what it is for you, recording based on percentage of your time. So I recommend bi-weekly. Put a reminder on your calendar for you and your technical team members. Takes 10 minutes. Okay, this week and last week, roughly what percentage of my time was I spending on this project, that project, and maybe admin work. Make buckets. It doesn't need to be like I was sending this email for 5 minutes and then doing this task for 1 hour. But, put it into categories of buckets. If I was working on this project for maybe 10% of my time last week, and then it was actually busy week this week, I took 40% of my time on this project. So percentage is fine. If you have tracking by hours, that's going to be great. But data recorded in the moment is much better than stronger data recorded after the fact. So if you record weekly, bi-weekly of what you're doing, and you actually have proof that that's when it was recorded, that's going to be much stronger evidence for the CRA, rather than going at the end of the year and saying, oh yeah, I think I spent 47 hours that month on this project. That's not a good practice to get into. So reporting it as it happens, it's annoying, I know, but it will help you be able to justify your SRED claim, and it honestly will make your SRED claim larger. And then in terms of actually what data you're keeping as you're doing the work, the more data, the better. So around the tests you're doing, what the lessons are, any data you record, that can be a photo of a whiteboard, that can be photos of lab equipment and the results from them. It can be a sloppy Excel file. It can be emails, meeting notes, pictures of a notebook. It's broad, but any proof you have is better than not. So truly just record any information you can. The best information that you kind of at a minimum need to record is around the goal of the project, what tests you're doing, and the lessons you've learned from those tests. So if you're changing one variable, what variable is that? What did you change it by? And what was the outcome of changing that variable? Tracking the costs around materials, salary, and contractor expenses is going to be key for understanding how much you can claim. So this kind of does go back to the time tracking for your employees, but for contractors, really understanding if you're paying them $50,000, what percentage of that is going to be for work that's, kind of not new for them, that's just their day-to-day operations, and what percentage of that work is going to be for the problem solving and the shreddable work. So having a better tracking around the contractor and the material expenses is going to be key as well. So a little bit about timelines and deadlines for SRED. Throughout the year, you're going to be compiling the documentation. You're going to be recording what you're doing, what you're learning, all the testing. The more information, the better. At the end of the year is when you prepare SRED. So that's typically when our clients engage with us, is around, a month or two after their fiscal year end. We work with you. We review all of the documentation. We create a preliminary project proposal. We actually have an AI voice agent that does interviews with you and your technical team members. Take around 5 to 10 minutes to nail down the technical uncertainty that you were addressing and really get clear on what you were doing. And then we do all the heavy lifting to create the SRED claim. We create the files, do all of that work. And then we'll typically work with your accountant to submit that to the CRA. So that's happening within 18 months of your fiscal year end. So if your fiscal year end is December, it's still not too late to file for SRED for 2023. So you can go up to 18 months after your fiscal year end. Typically, people file SRED with their taxes, with their business taxes at the end of the year. So that's if they're December year end, that's usually around March. But if you have missed a year of SRED or you need to go back after the fact, it's not too late even still to go back 18 months. You do have to amend your taxes, so it's a little bit more complicated, but we help with that, make it quite simple. And then you typically receive your refund within 2 to 5 months. It does really depend on the time of year. If it's right kind of in that busy tax season of like February, March, April, it's going to be slightly longer. If you end up getting audited, that usually takes a little bit longer, but we do help through that whole process and try to make it as simple as possible. Typically, the CRA just says, okay, good to go, and you get your cash refund. So it can be within like 3 weeks, but we typically say 2 to 5 months. Okay, so now a little bit about, now you understand SRED, you understand the basics. That was the SRED 101, that was the lesson. We're going to talk about how to actually use SRED to maximize and to use SRED for your growth. So 4 key questions. The first is around project identification. So who is identifying your SRED project? If you have your CFO, a project manager, and an engineer, who of those 3 people is identifying your project? When does that happen? It might need to be the engineer that actually is the one who says, I think this project's SRED eligible, but do they even know what SRED is? So it's important that you have a clear understanding within your business of who is doing that project identification, when that's happening, and are the right people trained on SRED. We often come in and help kind of in a preliminary way and do SR&ED education seminars for businesses to make sure that everyone, top to bottom within the organization understands the program so that you can actually identify projects sooner, track more time associated with that project, and therefore get a larger claim. Tracking your time. I mentioned this, but the more information you have, the better. More data is more SR&ED. So the more you can track your time, the more precision that has, the larger your SR&ED claim will be. And then around SR&ED strategy. So a lot of people are kind of going about business, normal operations, and thinking of SR&ED as just this kind of bonus that you get for the work you do. If you come into SR&ED a bit more strategically, you can actually increase your SR&ED claim by quite a huge percentage, depending on the business. But some strategies that we're seeing work really well is, as I mentioned, employees are quite a bit more lucrative than contractors. So if you're going to end up paying a contractor $50,000 to $100,000 annually for work that they're doing, or maybe it's even a one-time thing, if you hire an employee, even on a contract, you're going to be getting 2/3 of their salary back through the SR&ED program, whereas it's only around 40% if you hire the contractor. So if you know that almost all of the work that that contractor is going to be doing is eligible for SR&ED, take a second and think about, hey, can we hire an employee even on a 6-month contract, maybe a co-op student, maybe a master's student? What can we do to actually put this employee on our payroll and then have their salary be reimbursed through SR&ED? So it doesn't always make sense, but it is a great way to increase your SR&ED claim. And then one of the process around SR&ED strategies that we've seen work really well is incentivizing your employees to track and understand SR&ED. So if you provide a bonus, a benefit, a vacation day, some sort of tangible value to your employees for if they do a better job tracking your SR&ED, I promise you it will pay out tenfold. If you can offer even $1,000 bonus to your engineers, your developers, if they are consistently tracking their time every week and they consistently are putting time towards SR&ED projects. Or if you actually want to kind of breed a culture of innovation, if you can say, okay, if you can promise 20% of your time to do SR&ED projects throughout the course of the year, you get an extra 3 days of vacation. So you can actually kind of build that into the culture of your company to encourage employees to focus on those projects. So rather than SR&ED projects being kind of off to the side and you get to them when you get to them, if you kind of build that in as there's a benefit to your employees on the front lines of your company that are doing the technical work, to incentivize doing SR&ED work and tracking their SR&ED work, you will increase your SR&ED claim. Even if you have to pay your employees out a bit of money or give them vacation days, it will increase your SR&ED claim tenfold. So it's very valuable. It's been a great tool. We've seen it work really well in some of the companies we've worked with. So come into your SR&ED strategically. Don't just think of it as, okay, I do my normal work and then I get SR&ED. Have a little bit more precision and thought that goes into it, and it will pay off. And then the last is around SR&ED efficiency. So we talk to a lot of companies that are doing SR&ED internally, and they're saving money because they're not paying a consultant, but it's taking 30 to 50 man hours at the end of their tax year to figure out, compiling all their documents, figuring out what to write in their SR&ED claim, getting out all the information together. So So it's important to understand and to kind of ask yourself when you're going into your SR&ED process, is this the best use of my time? You probably are saving money for doing it internally, but is it the best use of your time? If your developers or engineers need to spend 20 hours at the end of the year compiling SR&ED or is that really the best use of their time? Your technical team members, the ones that should be solving problems, now they're filing a tax form for you. This is not probably the best use of their time. If they're not the ones trained on it, it's going to spend a lot of company time on problems that aren't they're above their pay grade, but it's technically their work. There's a lot of confusion around it. So if you're also working with a consultant, we see a lot of people working with large consultants like Deloitte or the big accountants. Their process is typically very manual. There's something for everyone, and these companies, they have a lot of benefits. They're a one-stop shop and they're great for that sense. But typically when you work with them for SR&ED, they'll give you a brochure that you basically, a huge document that you and your team need to go fill out all these questions around the work you did, what exact uncertainties you solved, and what you did. So that can take tens of hours with you and your team. that is not a great use of your time. You should not be the one, if you're not an expert in it, preparing your SR&ED claim. When you work with us at GrowWise, we've addressed that problem, and we've really designed our solution to save time and make sure it's the most efficient process as possible. So just ask yourself, is this the best use of my time? I'm going to go over a quick demo calculation to kind of understand how to quantify your SR&ED. So we're going to do an example company. They're an Ontario-based tech company. They're a CCPC, and they have $100,000 in shreddable salaries. We could say that's half of the time for 2 technical team members and an engineer and a developer, $50,000 each. And then there's $50,000 in shreddable contractor and consultant costs. So I'm just going to go and show you the SR&ED calculator. We have this free tool on our website. So this is what the tool looks like. Very user friendly. I wanted to show you guys this because it's a great. Oops, sorry. It's all good. Oh. Difficulties here. Oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. I think you can still see me online. Yeah, it's good. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so this is our SR&ED calculator. It's a free tool available on our website. We'll go for an Ontario company. They're a CCPC. They had $100,000 in shreddable salaries. No material costs. They're a tech company, so no material costs. And they had $50,000 in contractor expenses. This is where you could include a calculation. So if you got IRAP or any other government grants, those grants do chip away where you're eligible to get back through SR&ED. You can't double dip on the same dollar. So if you had $100,000 in innovation expenses, you got $50,000 for IRAP, you could only claim $50,000 with SR&ED. So you can still claim any of the expenses that you've paid out of pocket for your business, but you can't claim double on government funding. So we'll call that 0. And then we'll view the results. You can also get an email of this, which is handy. So this just breaks it down really quickly. If you had $100,000 of salaries, $50,000 of contractor expenses, you would get a total of $82,000, almost $83,000 back through the SR&ED program as a cash refund. So about $65,000 of this comes from the employee salary, and then less than 20 comes from the contractor costs. So as I mentioned, the salaries are quite a bit more lucrative, and this goes to show you can play around. If you remove the contractor expense, you could see this would not change by that much. It would still be around $65,000. So this is a really great tool if you're new to SR&ED and you're trying to understand what the implications will be on your cash flow. Now that you understand the timeline, you can go in and think, okay, I need to hire an employee. If I hire them now, if I start paying myself a salary now, what does that look like? Okay, this is how much I'm going to get back. You can understand if you're paying yourself a salary, you know how much that's going to get taxed on, you know how much you're going to get back through SR&ED. It's really useful in planning that from a cash flow perspective around, is it going to be worthwhile to pay yourself a salary? Is it going to be worthwhile to pay a contractor or hire someone, or are my materials, how much am I going to get back for those expenses, et cetera. So this is just a really useful tool. We recommend, kind of playing around in there. Sorry, a little slow here. There we go. So for this example, a company with, they've got some expenses going out the door, a couple salaried employees. They're probably only a team of 5 or so people, and all of a sudden they have an extra $83,000 in their pocket as a cash refund. So this can be a huge benefit to small companies, especially if you're building, scaling, growing your team. And now that you, yeah. Oh, sure, yeah.
The question says, it's about government funding and assistance. Does this include government contracts, or is it specifically for government funding programs? Parentheses, IRAP.
So if you were paid by a government for your product, I think that's what that means. Like if you were on a contract with the government and they were paying for your product, that doesn't count as government funding. This is specifically for grants, those sorts of programs where it's sort of free government money. But if the government is paying you for your product, or you're on a contract with them where you do work for them, that's not relevant to the SR&ED program. SR&ED actually, it does not matter at all where you get your money from. for SR&ED. It can be from your personal bank account that you put into your business account and then withdraw from there. That's totally fine. It can be venture money. It can be angel investors. It can be revenue. It doesn't matter at all for SR&ED where you got the money from. I mean, everything's above board, but as long as, you know, the business has money in the bank account that's coming out for these expenses, then that's what's eligible for SR&ED. So if you're getting, oh, see, this cord is a little bit, okay, there we go. I won't move it. So it doesn't matter where you're getting your money from as long as you're spending money. Okay, so key takeaways. Businesses miss out on SR&ED because they don't know they're eligible. We talk to companies all the time that had no idea they were eligible for SR&ED and are missing out on tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in SR&ED refunds. Let's make sure you don't do that. SR&ED can provide a cash refund for up to 2/3 of your eligible expenses. And this happens at the end of the year. After you've incurred those expenses, you get a refund through the CRA for those costs. I should mention, if you have any dues owing to the CRA, whether that be for any other tax implications or payroll, for example, that's paid off first, but then beyond that, any refund is given to you as a cash refund. And yeah, GrowWise, myself, we're here to help you access this funding. We're here to answer questions. Even if you're really early in, this is going to be in a couple years down the road. Just reach out. I'm here to answer any questions you have and really just here to help you guys access this funding. The more people know about this funding program, the better. So if you have any questions, please let me know.